Attention everyone, this is an emergency broadcast. The unpleasant noise you're about to hear coming from your radio is not a mistake. Please do not turn off your radio, but turn up the volume on your receiver as high as it can go, so that you can make the sound we broadcast as loud as possible.
Okay, now do it as Nick Adams.
Attention everyone, this is an emergency broadcast. And this is actually not in fact an episode of the Kaiju cast, which does always open with that monologue. Apologies to Kyle for ripping him off. That's another Kaiju podcast, Roz.
Right, you didn't tell me we were going to be plagiarising. I have nothing to do with this. It was all him.
It's a little fandom in-joke, but this is the Kaijusaurus Podcast. The podcast in which a lifelong Kaiju fan, being me, watches and reviews all 30 films in the Godzilla series with a blank slate / newbie being Ross, who is with me now.
Hello everyone.
Hi Ross.
We're back.
We're back, baby. We're going in defense of the Earth. We're going to fight to the last man, baby.
Or just talk about a film that we watched.
Exactly, and that film was
Invasion of the Astro-Monster.
Yeah.
Pardon me.
Well,
I fucked that up, didn't I?
Toho want its English title to be Invasion of Astro-Monster.
Right.
But in the English language, that's just not grammatically correct.
Yeah, it's not how it's translated.
So,
but
the VHS I had when I was a kid was tidied up a bit as Invasion of the Astro-Monsters.
right, well, what do you think we should be using? Astro-Monster or...
You use what you want, Ross.
Oh, no, don't make me do
You
that.
can use Kaiju Daisenso, The Great Monster War, Invasion of Astro-Monster, Invasion of the Astro-Monsters, Monster Zero, or Godzilla vs. Monster Zero.
Sound quite happy with those.
Yeah.
Well, that's fine. I'm just going to go with Invasion of Astro-Monster.
Invasion of Astro-Monster.
Because it is grammatically incorrect. And all the better for it.
All the better for it. So, Invasion of Astro-Monster is the subject of our discussion today.
And you had a point to make. When did this film come out, Steven?
This film, Ishiro Honda's Invasion of Astro-Monster, was released exactly 50 years ago today. That is December the 19th, 1965. Who knows if this episode will actually be released on the 19th of December 2015.
Maybe 2016.
Maybe 2016.
We'll just hold it till then.
But rest assured, it's been recorded 50 years to the date. This was actually not planned. It was a very happy accident. And many thanks to my friend Raph Alapagus on Tumblr for pointing that out. So, thanks, Raph.
Cheers.
Shall we get on with this?
Yeah, of course. Let's rock on.
This is Invasion of Astro-Monster. The team's all back.
Yeah, the gang's back.
Ishiro Honda, Akira Ifukube, Tomoyuki Tanaka producing, Eiji Tsuburaya on special effects, Shinichi Sekizawa doing the writing. Familiar faces among the cast: Akira Takarada, Agata in the original Godzilla, star of Mothra vs. Godzilla, is Fuji. John Fukuda, who was a military general in King Kong vs. Godzilla, and the newspaper editor in Mothra vs. Godzilla, is Dr. Sakurai. Some new faces for you: Akira Kubo plays Tetsuo, the inventor. Kumi Mizuno plays Miss Namikawa of Planet X, and a certain Caucasian, a certain Gaijin by the name of Nick Adams plays Astronaut Glenn, but we'll discuss him and Nick Adams much more. And before we get into the discussion, Ross, I just want to tell you something about the original. I feel the need to preface with this, yeah. Putting the original film aside, discounting that. I didn't tell you this before we watched it.
Right.
This is my favourite.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This film is my goddamn fucking favourite Godzilla film.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I was trying to figure out when I would mention this, but I figured this is the best time to mention this. Watching this film, a few things clicked for me, and I remembered a few things because, like a year or two ago, you came to me with the sort of video idea that we ended up making, which was Big G on Campus.
Big G on Campus.
Which was a sort of 5-minute short. We played ourselves. Our flat was being attacked by Godzilla.
That's right.
Yeah, it was a great little sketch, but a lot of the lines and a lot of the little references, which obviously there were a lot of references to sort of a lot of Godzilla there, but a lot of the lines and a lot of the little interactions that you were telling me to do, you were just like, oh yeah, we're both going to put our thumbs down. A lot of this is from Invasion of Astro-Monster.
That's right, yeah. And specifically the dub, yeah, the lines like, what do we do now? Well, we sure ain't going to wait for the next ferry. Swim! And other things like, hard luck, pal! And the thumbs down, and yeah.
Yeah, no,
so if you haven't seen Big G on Campus, this film stars Ross and I. I'll put a link to it in the show notes. And
you should.
I showed it at G-Fest last year.
Oh, did you?
And it went down a treat.
Where was my invite?
Winner, Spirit of G-Fan Award. So
good. Absolutely.
That's for spreading international understanding through Godzilla.
And
I shit you not. That's
and you fucking did it.
I'm proud to win that.
Yeah, no,
award.
absolutely. No, I was so glad and so proud of you for
Yeah.
winning that, and that you literally went to Chicago to show that.
Yeah.
And the reaction, you have the reaction video
That's right,
on
yeah.
your YouTube as well, and that's
I can
a lot
link
of
that
fun.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, it'll all be linked.
They take a while to settle into the accents, but once they get into it, yeah,
It happens.
It goes down well.
Much like this podcast, I imagine.
Which
we
brings
should,
us back to-
should we do an American dub?
I want Nick Adams to dub me.
Oh, absolutely.
Welcome to the Kaijusaurus Podcast, baby.
But yeah, no. Before we sort of jump into synopsis and sort of starting to chat about the film,
usual,
yeah.
yeah.
When did you first see this film?
Oh God, a while ago. I think
Last week, Ross.
it was maybe among the first 5 I ever saw. I mean, the first one I ever saw was 1991 Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, followed by Destroy All Monsters, followed by Godzilla vs. Mothra 1992, maybe followed by Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 1974, maybe followed by this. So I think we're definitely maybe within the first 5 I ever saw. Maybe if not, I think probably maybe 6th or 7th I ever saw.
Yeah.
And so we are talking about late 2000 or early 2001.
Right.
So I know this film quite well by now, and I said to Ross while we were watching it, we did watch it in Japanese with subtitles, unfortunately, because I weighed up whether to give him the full Nick Adams experience, but eventually I thought we'd just go with it and stick with uniformity. We're watching all these in Japanese with subtitles.
I agree with that decision,
But,
you're very familiar with the English dub.
The English dub is ingrained in my mind. I just watched it over and over again as a kid, and when I was watching it subtitled with you, I was hearing it dubbed in my head as well. Like so many of the lines I just know off by heart.
Yeah, and we'll obviously again teasers abound, but we'll talk about that in a little bit in fuller detail. But yeah, about how good a dub you think that is, and how better a version of a Godzilla film it has been than I assume some other
Exactly. Yeah.
some other ones. But yeah, no, I'm game to just jump right on into our story and
So.
Yes.
In the year 1960X.
X.
Unidentified year in the mid 1960s.
Was it 65? 64? 67?
Another planet has been discovered on the dark side of Jupiter called Planet X, and Earth has launched an exploratory spaceship, the P1, headed by astronauts Fuji and Glenn of the World Space Authority. Excuse me. That was disgusting.
That was disgusting.
The World Space Authority. And so they're heading off to investigate Planet X. What they find there are the Exians, or the Exilians, as they're
is there an official Exilians? Is that our official...
It's usually Exilian, but I've always known them as the Exians.
The Exians.
Yeah.
Well, Exians was the little head name that I came... that I was using in my little head.
Yeah, well, you saw it. I saw it written down in your notes.
Yeah.
I don't think the term Exian is ever actually used in the film, but you had it written down, yeah. So.
I'm tapped in, guys. I'm tapped in. But yeah, no, Exians, Exilians.
The commandant of the Exians explains to Fuji and Glenn that Planet X is under siege from none other than Monster Zero, a mysterious space monster that's forced the Exians underground and they can no longer live on the surface. But Monster Zero turns out to be our good old three-headed,
our new friend,
two-tailed pal, King Ghidorah, who after being defeated at the hands of Mothra, Godzilla, and Rodan at the end of the previous film, has fled into space and is now allegedly terrorizing Planet X and the Exians.
Dooming them to stay underground.
It's a good name for a band.
What?
Planet X and the Exians.
Planet X and the Exians. Feet King Ghidorah. But yeah, no, and this is, the commandant cites this being the reason that their society lives underground, why the sort of topography of the planet is sort of all fucky.
Yes, all fucky, exactly.
Yeah, it's all fucky.
That's a line in it, isn't it?
Yeah, no, or at least in the Scottish dub.
Our planet is not like yours, it is all fucky.
But yeah,
the Exians propose or plead to our Earthling heroes that they need Monster Zero 1 and Monster Zero 2, aka Godzilla and Rodan, transported to Planet X to help them fight off King Ghidorah. After much consideration, the Earth agrees to this in return for the formula for a drug which will cure cancer. Unbeknownst to us, the Exians have been on Earth all along, and
in the guise of
a toy company.
And this is where it ties into our two other characters, which is I've got her name.
Tetsuo
and
Fumiko, isn't it?
No, it's Haruno, the sister.
Yeah, you're right. Sorry.
Yeah, that's so Fuji, our
Haruno
astronaut.
Fuji, yeah.
He has a sister, and that is Haruno, and she works for the
World
World
Space
Space Authority.
Yeah.
And she has been seeing a charming young inventor
Called Tetsuo.
Tetsuo.
Played by Akira Kubo.
And so, meanwhile, essentially, while her brother and astronaut Glenn are off in space, Tetsuo has pioneered a new invention, a sort of personal alarm called
the Lady Guard alarm.
The Lady Guard, which, it's an important thing. I think personal alarms are a good thing. Good on Tetsuo.
Definitely.
But it's essentially, it creates a very loud screeching noise.
Yes.
Now, he has essentially pitched his idea to this toy company.
Yeah, an educational toy company.
They make educational toys for children.
Allegedly.
Unbeknownst to him, but known to us, this is indeed an alien front.
They are the Ixians.
They accept his proposal, and they promise that he'll be paid. They promise they'll take his product, but as we'll see later on, nothing seems to be going on with that. But that's the other little subplot that's
exactly.
going on.
So the Ixians appear and whisk Godzilla and Rodan and Fuji and Glenn and Professor Sakurai back off to Planet X, where Godzilla and Rodan, fight King Ghidorah and drive him off.
Mm-hmm.
But Godzilla and Rodan remain on Planet X.
Yes.
While our heroes return to the Earth with the formula for the drug that can cure cancer.
Uh-huh. But there's more.
Once they arrive back on Earth, they play the tape which allegedly contains the ingredients for the drug that cures cancer.
Uh-huh.
What does the tape say, Ross?
What does the tape say? The tape basically says, and I do quote, I don't quote. Basically, they are told that the Ixians are taking over the planet. They are colonizing the planet. Mm-hmm. If Earth does not accept this colonization, then they will be eliminated, destroyed
by Godzilla,
Rodan, and King Ghidorah. It's revealed that the Ixians have control of hyper-advanced electromagnetic technology that allows them to control all the three of these monsters.
Exactly.
They will do the Ixians' bidding, and the Ixians will sort of situate these three monsters on Earth as their sort of monster police force, essentially.
It was a big old ruse.
Mm-hmm. We've been tricked.
But it turns out the reason that the Ixians want Tetsuo's machine off the market is that the sound it emits is deadly to them. It emits a deadly frequency when deployed. It makes them actually just lose their fucking minds, basically.
Yeah, it kills them, or it causes them immense pain.
So, we don't need to wrap up. We just, from then, it's up to our heroes at the World Space Authority to find a way to bring the monsters, Godzilla and Rodan, back to the side of Earth.
Yeah.
And to defeat the Ixians
and King
once
Ghidorah.
And for all, and King Ghidorah.
Now that's done. Professor Ellipsis, the professor, what's his name?
Sakurai.
Professor Sakurai.
Played by Jun Fukuda. Jun Tazaki, sorry.
Oh, pardon you.
Jun Fukuda is a director who you'll... Anyway, we'll get there.
We'll get there. Professor Sakurai, he has devised an idea that he may be able to essentially, for lack of a better term, fuck with the electromagnetic energy.
Yep, he can...
And sort of...
Yeah, Fuji and Professor Sakurai use the A-cycle light ray.
That's right.
To intercept the aliens' mind control of the monsters, and they free Godzilla and Rodan and King Ghidorah actually from the aliens' mind control. And from that point on, they use the amplified nationwide frequency of the Lady Guard alarm.
Yeah, playing on radios all over the world
to destroy the alien spacecrafts, and Godzilla and Rodan drive off King Ghidorah back into space from whence he came. Good.
So the spell is broken on these monsters.
Yep.
First of all, the consolidated, the front for the aliens on Earth is destroyed, including then the UFOs that are hovering above, including the commandant ship. And no one escapes on Earth. None of the Ixians that are invading Earth or occupying Earth escape. They are all destroyed.
Yeah.
Once the spell's broken, as I say, there's another wee fight with King Ghidorah.
That's right.
Pardon me. and Godzilla and Rodan once again team up, and I'm really really enjoying their little team ups. And once that's done and the dust is settled, we have successfully repelled an invasion and failed colonization of Earth.
Exactly.
We feel really great.
And at the end, Glenn, Nick Adams' character, is given the wonderful news that he's to head back to Planet X and do a thorough survey. In the English dub, it said he has to go back to Planet X as an ambassador.
I don't know which one I like better. I like the idea, because one of those implies that obviously that the Exians are still there, we know they're there, they know we're there, we have to deal with them on a diplomatic level. Yeah. The other one implies that we have sort of eliminated the Exians to a degree, and that so much of their stuff so much of their stuff is just now lying empty, lying in the open. Like, go around and see what you can steal.
Yep, that was the last of the species.
Yeah,
committed genocide.
Yeah, no, so Earth is saved, and as far as our human characters go, astronauts Glenn and Fuji, you say, are headed back to space. Our other two characters, Haruno, the sister, and Tetsuo, we assume we'll get together now that they have the blessing of
Fuji.
Because
Tetsuo helped save the world.
And Glenn's backing, because Glenn was always sound with Tetsuo.
Glenn was always on Team Tetsuo.
Yeah, exactly.
I think love is a beautiful thing. I think mutual trust is a beautiful thing.
I'm kind of proud of us. That was a fairly succinct synopsis. Yeah, it's better than last week.
Considering, the last episode took the entire episode.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I really like this film.
This is
which is my catchphrase for this podcast. But no, I like this film a lot. I really do understand why it's your favorite. It's a sci-fi film, first of all.
Yeah, through and through, absolutely.
Yeah, through and through, absolutely. It builds on the sci-fi elements that were embedded in King Ghidorah last time around.
Absolutely.
But I still argue that to me was much more of a political thriller.
Yeah.
Here we have Godzilla, the Godzilla franchise, wearing the full sci-fi cap, and it's all the better for it, right from the start. And I think now I've got the sort of disparate notes and things to point out, so I probably will just sort of roll through various
No, that's fine.
thoughts.
I mean, you're absolutely right about the sci-fi, though. I mean, the previous films have been just in terms of, like, well, at least in terms of pure definition in the Western world, anyway, they are sci-fi, I suppose, just by way of them featuring giant monsters.
And always the element and the genre is never always like quite so clear cut.
Well, exactly.
You know, a film's either you are a sci-fi or you're not a sci-fi. But, the elements are always there.
Yeah, I've never felt fully comfortable just saying, "Oh, these films are sci-fi films," because I don't really see them as
they're
that.
comedies and they're political thrillers and they're alien invasion movies and they're war movies or military movies in a way.
Exactly, but this one is through and through a sci-fi space opera.
Yeah, exactly.
Intergalactic war epic,
and it's playing. I like at least the vague. To me, the tiniest sense of continuity on maybe a meta level, in that our last film had our first foray into space and a sort of vague allusions to space. But
now we actually go into
space.
Now
we are progressing. And this is what 1965, like this, as you've always said, like height of the space race. And that's abundantly clear.
Exactly.
And the other thing that I wanted to talk about was just, the sort of space race and is all over this film, and the world's sort of obsession with space in the 60s really shows. For example, early on in the film, the restaurant that Tetsuo and Haruna go to is wonderful, and that is just like the weirdest little sci-fi restaurant I've ever seen. It comes right after a shot of the spaceship, which is, the stars on the black endless night of space.
As a kid, I thought they were in a restaurant in space.
Because it looks like it's in space because the walls have the stars in it. It's got these weird like sculptures around it. The tables are cool.
Fuji and Glenn were going to park their rocket and then go and meet them.
And then meet them at the space diner. There's like that's such a cool restaurant. There's like walkways above the tables and things. I was in love with that restaurant. The opening credits of that really just sell or explain to me what this film is going to be about. We get the shot of the P-1. We have a shot of a rocket in stand ready to leave. There's shots of radars, of saucers.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, so, and then obviously the sort of Planet X 1960X opening.
Yeah.
We are sort of filled right in and then jumping right to the spaceship and meeting astronauts Glenn and Fuji. Now, you said to me just as we were sort of setting up to record, you said to me that, well, I'll let you put it in your own words about Glenn and Fuji.
What did I say about Glenn?
Oh, well,
and Fuji?
you sort of said to me that they're one of your favorite.
Oh yeah, no, yeah,
sets
you're
of
right. Yeah,
protagonists.
like Glenn and Fuji, just as like a sort of little double act or a little pair. They are my favorite protagonists in the whole series. Like they're such like, good buddies, and they have such like Nick Adams and Akira Takarada have like such good chemistry together,
do.
and like they do play off each other really well, and that's because they got on really well on set as well.
Yeah,
They
no,
got on
because
really
I
well
guess
behind the
this
scenes
is
and-
probably the perfect time to talk about Nick Adams. Now,
Well-
I am completely
yeah.
and performances in general, but Nick Adams. Pardon me. Yeah, this is the time to talk about Nick Adams.
The actor known as Nick Adams. Yeah, well,
who I'm not familiar with, but I'll let
Nick
you
Adams
start
was
with
an
this.
American actor who, in the 50s, ran with James Dean in his crowd. Was a very close friend of James Dean, and actually dubbed some of James Dean's lines in, I believe, Rebel Without Cause,
Right. Okay.
because James Dean died, and they couldn't do any ADR.
Yeah.
So I believe it was Rebel Without a Cause Nick Adams filled in some of the lines for, because he was a close friend of
Yeah.
James Dean. And he was an actor who, I can't remember who said this about him, but it's very true. His career is marked as much by what he could have done, more so than what he did do.
Yeah.
He starred in a TV series called The Rebel, I believe it was called. I don't know anything about
Yeah.
it, but I think it was maybe a western or something. I'm not totally sure. But in the '60s, early '60s, his career started to decline a little bit. He was getting more like sort of more low budget things, sort of
Yeah.
exploitation, like low budget horror, that sort of thing. Did a film called Die Monster Die with
Uh-huh.
Boris Karloff, and his career really hit like a kind of bad note when
Shuddering jolt.
he was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. I can't remember what for. I will put it in the show notes. But he was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor, and he was so sure he was going to get it that he arrived to the theater early so he could practice his walk up the stage.
Oh, Nick.
He didn't get it.
Oh, Nick.
He didn't get it.
Yeah.
And so I think this really humbled him a bit, because he did once state, "I will never make a picture abroad."
Right.
But I think that experience with the Oscars humbled him a bit, because not long after he was in Britain making a film with Boris Karloff, like I said there, called Die Monster Die. And as an adaptation, actually, of the H.P. Lovecraft story, The Colour Out of Space.
Okay.
And not long after, he found himself in Toho,
Yeah.
in Japan. 3-picture deal with Toho, organised through a man called Henry G. Saperstein of the United Productions of America, which was a company which co-financed some Toho films. This one, Invasion of Astro-Monster, another film called Frankenstein vs. Barugon, or Frankenstein Conquers the World, and another one called The War of the Gargantuas.
Right.
I'll just run through those briefly. So Nick Adams' 3-picture deal was Invasion of Astro-Monster, Frankenstein Conquers the World, and a kind of spy espionage comedy, I think, called The Killing Bottle.
Right.
All 3 of which he co-starred with Kumi Mizuno, who was Miss Namikawa in this
Right.
film, but I will get onto that.
Oh, will you?
And-
What am I going to find out?
The other film, which Saperstein co-produced, was The War of the Gargantuas, which starred one Russ Tamblyn, who you'll
Ooh.
know as Dr. Jacoby in
Yes,
Twin Peaks.
yeah. Which you've been watching.
Which I have been watching. I have
And
much
I
to
have
say
too.
about it, but... Well,
That's for another
yeah,
podcast.
This is the Twin Peaks Kaijusaurus Podcast.
The Pixasaurus.
We make that joke every week.
We do.
Anyway, so yeah, Russ Tamblyn made War of the Gargantuas. So yeah, Nick Adams made those 3 pictures with Toho, 2 under the direction of Ishiro Honda, and I don't know who directed The Killing Bottle. I mean, it wasn't Honda. I'm 99.99% sure of
Yeah.
that, but I'll put it in the show notes again. Haven't seen that one. I'd like to, but apparently Nick Adams was a complete gentleman.
Really?
He was absolutely lovely to work with. There was no sort of preconceptions about him being a big Hollywood star, like being a big American star or anything. He was there to work.
Yeah.
He was there to act. He was there to do a job.
That's
And
nice to hear. That's good to
apparently
hear.
he became really interested in Japanese culture and really made an effort to be respectful to it and to practice some of the customs and traditions while he was there. And he befriended a lot of the Toho actors and staff members he worked with. Like, for example, there's a story that the actor who plays the Exian commander in this film, Yoshio Tsuchiya, just gave Nick Adams the gift of a suit because he had bought this suit for himself and it didn't fit him, and it fit Nick Adams, and he was like, "Oh, you can have it then."
That's great.
And there's some great behind the scenes photos, which I'll try and post a note to as well if I can find them again, of Nick Adams and a lot of the cast of this film and the cast of Frankenstein Conquers the World. There's a lot of overlap in the cast there, but just like kind of having a party, and like Nick Adams has got a guitar out and they're all drinking, and it's great. It's really great to see them all. Whereas apparently Russ Tamblyn was an absolute arsehole. I think someone described him as Nick Adams was a complete gentleman. Russ Tamblyn was a royal pain in the ass. Apparently he was everything Nick Adams wasn't. But we're not talking about Russ Tamblyn. We're not talking about the War of the Gargantuas. We're not talking about Twin Peaks. We're talking about Nick Adams and Invasion of Astro-Monster.
Yeah, because I mean the thing is that like that's the sort of idea of the, or even I don't know what to say, the trope of the sort of American actor doing films in Japan. Always, to me is always the completely unappreciative, dismissive, unhappy. That's
how it's always portrayed.
Or like that, or to my mind at least, that's what I think. Is the idea that the actor themselves is sort of angry about it. There's like a few.
There's a naivety that they're being brought down to a certain level, that they're going to have to work abroad, that they're going to work in the
indignity of it,
like a little rinky-dink foreign studio, whereas actually Toho
was a power.
Yeah, exactly.
It still is.
Well, Toho's still got a grasp on Japanese cinema, not as much as it used to, but it's still the studio.
It's still one.
Nick Adams does these 3 pictures with Toho.
Yeah, that's a play, and
he died not long after.
Yeah.
A drug overdose, I believe. I think it was medical drugs. But again, I'll put this in the show notes. I should know this. I've read it many, many times. But it's one of these deaths where it's a bit sketchy.
Yeah.
Put it this way. He was dead by the time this film was released in the US.
Oh, that's a shame.
Which really, really sucks.
Yeah, that sucks.
But Nick Adams and Kumi Mizuno.
What about them?
Apparently, during the production of these 3 films, Adams, a married man, fell passionately in love with Mizuno.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Because she was his leading lady in all 3 of these films, and I believe in all 3 of the films they're sort of having a romantic relationship to some extent. And so apparently he fell madly in love with her, and even asks her to marry him, even though he was married.
Because marriages are different in Japan, I guess.
But I believe Kumi Mizuno was already betrothed to someone.
Mm-hmm. So it just wasn't be.
But apparently they did have a sultry affair.
Well, there we go.
A very steamy affair.
There you go. What happens on the set stays on the set.
I can't watch these films without knowing, like, used to, but
I mean, I must say that as you, when we finished the film only about, an hour ago?
Yeah, something like that.
But just before we set up to record, Steven showed me just a few clips from the English dub, just because you're familiar with it.
Yeah, to get a taste of what Nick Adams actually sounded like.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously he has that. I can't tell what the accent is. It's fairly slurred.
He sounds like he's been watching a lot of James Cagney gangster films from the 1930s.
It's got that.
We're gonna fight to the last man, baby.
But yeah, no, you showed me essentially the confrontation between Nick Adams and
Namikawa.
Yeah, who's now, they had a little thing when she was pretending to be a human.
Yeah.
Now it's revealed that she's an alien.
Yeah. And it's the scene where after the Earth has turned to turmoil after the riots at the hands of the Exians, Glenn is doing something.
Yeah, it's
he's
something.
just strutting around with a gun.
Because we'll come to that. Because
this office, it's the office of the toy company, I believe. I suppose we can assume he's looking for Namikawa.
That would make sense. Yeah.
So he's in the ruins of the toy company, and he comes across Namikawa, who is now in full Exian garb, and they have a little confrontation / attempt at reconciliation. Until it's rudely interrupted. But you want to talk about that? Or?
Well, no, just carrying on with Nick Adams. We'll keep on with Nick Adams. That scene between Nick Adams and what's the actress's name?
Kumi Mizuno.
That obviously it was a great scene in the film that I watched, but within the dub as well, just having Nick Adams' direct performance as well was great. And
no, it isn't.
Yeah, and that's a great scene. It is an electric scene between the two of them, and it's great to have that very like dark, electric, almost like femme fatale kind
Yeah.
of relationship sort of unfold in the Godzilla film, which was great fun. But yeah, no. So Nick Adams is great in that film. So are the other. So is everyone else.
But Nick Adams in particular is a real pleasure to watch, just because he is just a great screen presence in this film, and knowing that he wasn't an ass about it, knowing that he threw himself into it and had no preconceptions about himself, that he was there to act and just counted himself among the cast of the film, makes it a pleasure to watch him. And I mean, I have no doubt in my mind if Nick Adams was still with us, he would have been at a G-Fest at one point. He would have been at a G-Fest. I'm absolutely sure of it.
Oh yeah,
and it's just a shame that he's not around anymore.
Yeah,
but yeah, that's Nick Adams.
But yeah, no, I was pleased with that character. His character, Glenn the astronaut, was great. He brought like a flavor.
Yeah,
that has just not yet been seen in the in the Godzilla film. I like the character dynamics between these guys. There weren't too much of it. It was just enough to sort of keep the plot going and to keep like a little bit of relationship going.
I agree.
It wasn't as in depth as maybe some of the other as for example the relationship between Haruna and Tetsuo is not the fact that they want to be together, but her brother won't let her.
Yeah, it's not exactly.
It's not as explored.
Emiko, Serizawa,
it's not
Ogata,
explored in that depth.
And it is easy to keep bringing back comparisons to the original, but you're right in that case. It's not developed to that extent, and it's not the core focus of these characters' kind of arcs.
No, but it's still fun to watch them unfold, because obviously Fuji is particularly dismissive of Tetsuo.
Yeah, and
but Glenn the astronaut he's great pals with him. He's like,
mutual trust, it's a beautiful thing. I should have showed you that scene actually with Nick Adams in his original voice, because it's just great.
Because there's a great wee scene where essentially the four of them, Fuji, Glenn, Haruna and Tetsuo, are having essentially a very, very, very awkward lunch date.
That's right.
They've come together in a restaurant. Fuji, completely sort of angry, dismissive, refuses to allow them to marry.
How good is Akira Takarada at the grumpy face?
Oh, he's
just
great.
Kind of being a grump.
Yeah, just like a dismiss. It's quite fun because there's so many brother and sister pairings in Godzilla.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
And one that I particularly liked was in the last film, King
Ghidorah. The detective and the journalist.
I liked it a lot, and they had a very nice relationship. They still live with their mother. Lovely, lovely brother and sister. And here we have a different sort of relationship.
A very kind of almost overprotective.
Yeah, Fuji's much more patriarchal. He literally, after making the decision for his sister that she isn't going to marry Tetsuo, then shoves some money in her hand. You know, like he takes it upon himself to protect her, quote unquote.
Yeah.
Without her permission, essentially, and giving her money.
But yeah, that scene is great when Glenn just speaks up in defense of them, saying mutual trust is a beautiful thing, and then he goes, "Oh, by the way, I have to go now.
I'm going on a date."
It's just that face, that look on Tetsuo's face, like, please don't go.
Yeah, exactly. Well, he says this, and his sister says this, Haruna says as such, just don't go.
Yeah.
Please, stay here, please. You're the only thing not making this collapse into awkwardness.
In the English language version, Nick Adams' line is just, it's something like, "Oh, you're going to have to really do something impressive. The enemy is very powerful."
That's so funny. And then, Nick Adams, astronaut Glenn, just jumps out the restaurant, dives into a fancy automobile with
Namikawa.
Yeah, with Namikawa.
Lucky man. But like I said to you before this, Ross, that something I'd really like to do, a project I'd like to do at one point if I have the determination and the time, is I'd really love to make a hybrid version of this film. Because surprisingly, it doesn't exist. I'd love to make an audio track that has all the Japanese actors speaking Japanese and has Nick Adams speaking English, a la Don Fry in Final Wars. Because it would just be the best possible version to watch it. That way you're actually seeing all the performances as they were intended or as they were given.
Yeah, no, that's true. Like, completely... Because, while I really liked the clips that he showed me from the English dub, obviously I am glad that we watched the true version, or for lack of a better term,
because everyone else.
Yeah, because to me that's the more genuine, that's the more honest, or the more truthful version. But that's a great way that they would really like sort of get the true version of both performances.
Best of both, exactly. I would love to make a hybrid version.
Yeah,
maybe I will at one point, but it's That would be hard work.
Watch the space. Don't ask about it.
So what's next? Do you want to talk about the Exians at
I
all?
do.
Or,
Yeah.
I know Planet X itself. And...
We'll talk about Planet X and the Exians. It was fun to watch this film go, as we said, into space age stuff.
Yeah, hard sci-fi territory,
true for its time, essentially.
Yep.
No one was immune to the space craziness, and everyone was into it.
Exactly.
But Planet X is such a great concept. It's a great name. Just Planet X. We're told it's sort of it was a previously unknown sort of orbiter of Jupiter.
Yeah, and we couldn't see it because it was on the dark side of
right,
Jupiter.
Sort of on the far side of Jupiter. Once we get on the planet, it's obviously destroyed. A few weird things go wrong. There's the lightning that the two astronauts see. Glenn disappears. Human footprints are found, and then finally, when Fuji seems completely alone on the planet, a cylinder rises from the Earth.
Astronaut Fuji.
And he gets in for lack of anything better to do. The X base, I thought was really interesting when he goes down and it's the sort of circular room with the sort of door after door.
Follow the light. The light is your guide.
That was great. The doorways themselves are shaped so strangely. They're such odd tunnels.
They look alien.
Yeah, they look alien. And the thing that's great about them is that when they really fuck up the light because the shadows on the tunnel at the end of the tunnel's in darkness, and the shadow, just because how weirdly curved the corridor walls are, just the shadow sort of just strips along it, and it's difficult to describe it. It looks great.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right.
And I love the dramatic lighting that's used on the Exian base. So many times the lights just darken, they light up, things in the room have changed, the room's moved, or the lights going dark in the corridor. Fuji going deeper into this really strange corridor, only for the lights to sort of come up to reveal a much more domestic looking or much more familiar to a human tables and chairs, a few machines.
Where he finds Glenn again.
Yeah, where Glenn's there, all right, how you doing? It feels like a little conference room. The commandant is a great little villain.
Played by an actor called Yoshio Tsuchiya, who you've seen already. He was in Godzilla Raids Again, but I don't expect you to recognise him underneath.
Yeah, the
Exian garb. Plus, we watched Raids Again a while ago. He was a fighter pilot in Raids Again.
Right.
But he's a bit of an eccentric in real life.
Oh yeah.
He's still with us. He's really eccentric, and he he claims on multiple occasions to have been abducted by UFOs, and this is why he enjoys so much playing aliens and paying
tribute.
Yeah, as well as just playing these really eccentric roles. And apparently he's written books on UFOs, and he claims to have been abducted several times.
That's great.
And it's like, Yoshio, you haven't, have you?
Come on, buddy. That's great. Well, maybe it influenced his performance. But no, the costumes for the Exians are great. And again, I always talk about especially when it's the Ishiro Honda Godzillas, I talk about just how great his blocking is always, and how he's so great at having maybe the one or two characters in focus, and then the sort of ensemble always really gathered around him in very interesting ways. And again, that classic sort of blocking is used for the Exians. We have the commandant right in front, and then essentially his little fleet or army, any number, you can do it with 2, you can do it with 4. It's essentially just really sinister symmetry. Always the perfect, identical looking Exians behind him.
That's right.
And their costumes look great, and it was helpful, and it was nice. And in the scene where we are introduced to the head of the educational company, before we realise it's an alien front, we are introduced to the boss, who is currently in his office, not listening to Tetsuo, sort of turning him away from a meeting, and he's in a sunbed.
Yeah, he's some sort of weird
blasted
treatment. He's got plugs in his back.
Yeah, and there's something weird with him. And at first, I thought, oh, this is interesting because here's now the character who has cancer or something like that. I just thought maybe he's
yeah.
and that the fact that now a cure for cancer is up for stakes is one of the stakes in the subplot that's going to come into play. But I was obviously wrong. But he's also wearing little sunbed goggles that you wear, and they're just thin little black goggles. And the second I saw those, costume design wise, you're like, oh,
it's clearly the Exian visor.
It's that Exian visor. And maybe that is what it is, and it's not a sunbed thing as well. But
and I think it's definitely the visor worn by the Exians. Yeah.
But it once you see that, you go, oh well, there we go. Something's much. But pardon me,
something's up.
Yeah, something's up. Another wee thing that I noticed that I liked the speech that the commandant gave, and it's at the start when they initially introduce themselves to Fuji and Glenn, where he says, "Now, King Ghidorah, Rodan, Godzilla, you use names, we use numbers."
Yeah, King Ghidorah's Monster Zero.
King Ghidorah's Monster Zero, then it's
Godzilla's Monster 1 and Rodan's Monster 2.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You know, that's how the Exians do things. And
where's Mothra?
Yeah, exactly. Where's Mothra? Come on. I know. Yeah, no. Here's the thing. They did not give Mothra any credit. They said that, well, the last time King Ghidorah came and fought on Earth, he was defeated by Godzilla and Rodan. Excuse me.
Who brought them together?
Excuse me. That would never have happened. They were scrapping with each other.
Who cheered the Monster Summit?
Yeah, exactly. Who was in charge of that? Come on, credit where credit is due, please, Commandant. But yeah, no, and it always, again, this just harks back to I love with these films, and although, as obviously, they're not all meant to be direct sequels, they're not all meant to be strictly in the same universe necessarily.
Yeah, very loose continuity.
Yeah, there's a loose continuity.
Yeah. But I think what you're going to say is, and what I agree with, is that Mothra versus Godzilla, Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, and Invasion of Astro-Monster form a very nice little trilogy.
Yeah, no, totally.
There's a solid sense of those all very much continuing off from the last, and they all make reference to the previous one.
Yes,
followed on
exactly,
from.
Yeah. The other thing I was going to say there is I just like that with each of these films is that we sort of, the scope expands. I've always said that I like the idea that now, after numerous giant monster attacks, that Japan and the world have become not desensitized, but it's no longer a sort of supernatural phenomenon.
Yeah.
It's like inclement weather.
Yeah.
Sometimes a giant monster attack happens, and it's interesting to see that now affecting, or at least if we believe the Exians' lies, other planets. It's great to see that Earth has its own problems with King Ghidorah. We have our own problems with giant monsters. These are not unique to Earth.
In the English dub, there's an implication that King Ghidorah was always under Exian control.
Right.
In the events of the previous film.
Uh-huh.
But I don't subscribe to that theory.
That makes sense, and if you want to use that, and if that's something you like using, then perfect, go with it. Yeah. I remember last episode, you said that something that would disappoint you about future uses of King Ghidorah would that he doesn't ever again live up to that sort of intergalactic
menace. Yeah. He's usually, in almost all of its subsequent appearances, it's under control.
Yeah, and I gotta say, it was disappointing to just see King Ghidorah used much like another monster. We have a monster, we'll use him. And well, at first, obviously, I was pleased because they claim that King Ghidorah is attacking the planet.
Yeah.
And that worked. It was like, oh, cool, yet another planet sort of struggling under Ghidorah, struggling under King Ghidorah. But, I mean, technically, though, that theory would make sense.
It would
explain why King Ghidorah is attacking the planet in the first place, why he's there.
But then you'd have to totally ignore the entire Venusian.
That's true. That's true. Exactly. Yeah. They cancel each other out. It's awful. But yeah, no, I'm not sure how I'd think about that. I think sometimes you just got to click off a switch and just say that this is what it is in this film.
I just like to think after the last film, King Ghidorah flew back off into space. And the Exians came across him and thought, we'll have that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And again, this film was interesting because really Godzilla and, in a way, the giant monster fight was sort of... It happened much near the end as well. But
and it's really secondary.
It is very secondary. In a way, you could remove that from the film and still have that in a way.
You would still have an alien invasion ethic.
Yeah, exactly, because in a lot of these films, as we've always said, that the Godzilla is obviously our A-plot, the destruction, where he's headed next, how we're going to stop him, and often we are treated with very interesting B-plots, and these are our side characters, and these little things. For example, the sort of market takeover, not the market, the buying of the Mothra egg.
In Mothra versus Godzilla,
Godzilla.
Whereas in this film, the human character's story is first and foremost.
First and foremost. And the invasion is the prime plot. The enemies are not King. The enemy is not King Ghidorah. The enemy is the Exians.
Exactly.
And we defeat the Exians not by Godzilla. Godzilla helps deter King Ghidorah.
Yeah.
But we defeat him ourselves, essentially.
Exactly,
I'm speaking we as the human race.
The royal not literally Ross and I.
We did. We are in that film. But no, yeah. So that was interesting as well. It's nice to see that there's a variety in these films. That there are, as I've said, variety of genre for the Godzilla films. Variety of sort of some films very human heavy, some films very monster heavy, some films heavy on the sci-fi, on the military aspects. I'm fine with these changes and a film that can be weaker in one aspect or stronger in another because, 30 odd films, we have this variety, which film and film again, I'm always just like pleasantly surprised by, and I'm always eager to just see what weird little thing and is going to happen next or what different dynamic I'm going to see. So I really did like this film. And another thing now that I want to talk about is, in general, and this is more of a plot thing and a thing that I like to think about, is the invasion of Earth by the Exians. We're treated to a nice little sort of newspaper montage that explains to us the severity of this invasion, this colonization. I've actually I wrote some sort of quotes from from here. So we do not have the cure for cancer. Instead, we have world chaos. We have essentially what one of the newspapers describes as mass insanity across the world. We are told in an offhand line that King Ghidorah is ravaging the United States. We see shots, and I really like this. Obviously, in the opening, we have the radar, the rocket. Later on in this film, the rocket is destroyed. The radar dish is melted, and that looked great. The radar dish actually heating up and melting and just sort of like crumbling into itself. That was great. That looked wonderful, and the model work in this film, really great. Rodan's wings blowing, seeing the wind and like soldiers being pushed down the street, and seeing the wind like push through the street was great.
That brings me on to the point I was going to bring up next. If you're finished,
well, I'll finish very briefly, in that I think a great little implication, and you get a lot out of this scene, and it's again going back to the scene where Glenn confronts Namikawa. I'm gonna get better at this one day. Where they're confronting at the sort of wrecked office. And this happened, this is the first scene we see right after this montage. The office is destroyed, and Glenn just all of a sudden has a gun. And I love this implication. We don't know exactly how long it's been. For certain, at least a day or two. A few days. And I know, obviously, that we still have the countdown for final destruction of Earth by the Exians. So it couldn't have been too long. But they've certainly given us a deadline. Let the clock tick and just watch us fucking destroy each other. Exactly. It's great to just suddenly see Glenn with a gun in this office. Like, is it been 2 or 3 days? Has order collapsed in like different areas of the city? Like, who wrecked this office?
He's taken to have
has it been raided for supplies? It's nice to imagine that just like for a few days, like shit's gone down. And that's interesting because the world is really affected in this film. Like, and obviously it's not
it feels like a big global threat, and it feels like the end is going to happen. But the point I was going to make is when you brought up Rodan's Gale Force winds collapsing buildings and blowing soldiers away, did you notice anything? Did that footage look at all strange to you, or did it look like it didn't quite belong or anything?
It looked still, in a way. Why?
Because as much as I adore this film, it's the start of a rather unfortunate trend. Stock footage.
Oh,
Ross.
There we go.
A lot of the footage of Rodan's attack is taken from Rodan.
Right. Okay.
And I mean, obviously, this is the age before home video at all.
Yeah.
And films were by and large seen once back then. And this is 9 years after Rodan was released. And
Who's going to notice?
well, I mean, I guess that was their logic. Yeah. So who in the audience is going to go, wait a second? It's easier for us to spot it now.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's why in one scene, when Rodan is lowering itself into the city, it appears very kind of crimson red, and the suit looks a little bit different.
Yeah,
it's because it is a different suit.
It's an older suit. Woo.
So yeah, there's some stock footage in here of just building destruction and things like that. And I mean, it's unfortunate, but this stuff is integrated better than some subsequent uses will be.
Okay.
Yeah,
because I mean, I didn't notice, so for now I'll say it was fairly subtle.
Yeah. Well, exactly.
Consider me fooled.
Well, that's it. If I didn't tell you, you wouldn't know.
Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice,
shame on Toho.
Shame on you, Toho. Well, to be honest, I've reached the end of my notes.
Yeah, I mean, that was a great discussion.
Yeah, short and sweet. I was quite happy with that.
One thing I actually meant to bring up is just
Yeah,
all my notes say is Invasion of Astro-Monster show notes. Bullet point 1, Nick Adams. Bullet point 2, I'm just going to discuss. Bullet point 3, stock footage. Right, bullet point 2. The Exians. Are they time travelers? Because there's just one or two little throwaway lines that have through the years made me go, wait, what? Are they traveling in time? When they capture Tetsuo and hold him in a cell, the soundproof cell below the lodge on the island, he says, in the dub, hey, what's the big idea? What are you guys going to do? And he goes, we are changing history. Mm-hmm. And it's that very specific way of saying it. Like, you wouldn't just say that. Like, the screenwriter, Sekizawa, wouldn't just say that for, like, the purpose of making it sound dramatic or something. It's like, that's a very specific way to say we're destroying the planet. We're changing history. And then the subtitle line is we're changing human history. Yeah. It's like, what does that mean?
Yeah, what does that mean?
And then at the end, when
I remember this.
Yeah, the commandant is in his UFO. And it's being blasted and it's just about to blow up. And
he presses a button. Yeah,
he presses a self-destruct button. Well, what appears to be a self-destruct button. And he says a line like, let's escape. Let's all escape into the unknown future. And in the dub, it's all of you join me in escape. But he specifically mentions let's escape into the future. Yeah. And just those two lines have been kind of play on my mind over the years. And like wake up in the cold sweat in the middle of the night, like, are the Exians time travelers? That's a running joke we keep doing as well. Me waking up in a cold sweat in the middle of the night.
About Godzilla, you might.
I mean, I do, but I mean, that every time I watch this film, I go, are they fucking time travelers?
I like that a lot. And certainly the lines give you enough of an implication.
It's a fun little.
It's a fun thing to have.
It's vague enough to be fun, and it's fun enough to sort of make up stuff around it.
Yeah,
they're aliens from the future. They are actually from a barren planet in the future, and they've come back in time to
their barren planet in the past
to try and save it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, no, and that works as well.
But I mean,
that's a good motivator.
That's all in the realms of a hypothetical.
It's all conjecture, yeah.
But yeah, I really like those lines.
I know, I like that last line as well. And watching it, the time travel thing flickered in my mind for a second. But I also did just like it as a very weirdly too philosophical. Discuss or idea of death. We're escaping into the unknown future.
Yeah.
Just might be dead. Don't know what it's like though. Certainly don't know what it's like for Exians. Don't know where they go when they die.
Right.
Let's start wrapping this up.
That's fine. Oh,
exactly.
We've got a few things to do there, Ross.
I mean,
we have user comments.
Good. Let's hear them.
First of all, though, I'm going to read out a late submission.
Right. Okay. For last week.
For last time's film, Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, and this comes from my good friend Chris. Online, and he says, "Hi there, Stephen." Just says Stephen, doesn't say Ross.
Thanks.
Hi there, Stephen. Thought I'd submit a submission after listening to some of the really insightful ones that made it into the Mothra vs. Godzilla podcast. So bear in mind this is about Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster and not about Invasion of Astro-Monster, just in case you can't keep up. Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster is not a perfect entry in the Godzilla series and could easily be considered a step down in quality after the excellent Mothra vs. Godzilla. But does that stop it from being an entertaining standout entry in the series? Of course not. Ghidorah offers an interesting storyline that takes a bold step by arguably being even more fantastical than Mothra vs. Godzilla. Now, beyond just the concept of Mothra's twin fairies and Mothra herself being shrouded in mystical ambiguity, seemingly omniscient aliens enter the fray. As a side note, the origin of the aliens differ depending on which cut of the film you view, which you and I discussed, Ross. Of course, many kaiju fans will be aware that in the US cut, the aliens are/were from Mars, while the Japanese cut explained Venus to be the planet of their origin. But interestingly, the digital copy of the Japanese cut that I own, that Chris owns, states that Jupiter is in fact their home planet. I must say, I've never come across that translation. Oh well, that's interesting.
That's interesting.
Either way, Jupiter and Venus seem far less cliched planets to use than Mars.
Yeah.
I agree with that, definitely.
Totally.
A change added in the US cut that arguably hurts the story's integrity. I agree.
Yeah.
Whilst on that subject, the film's integrity seems to constantly hang in the balance. The film's first half maintains itself fairly well, engaging us with just who this prophet girl is, as well as a mysterious meteorite. That being said, at times, there seems to be more than just a few scenes that last longer than they need to, slowing the pace down. Indeed, the story concerns itself with providing answers to questions very few are asking. For example, in a film featuring alien mind control, mythical fairies, and giant monsters, I wasn't concerned with how the princess survived her fall after her plane exploded. Yet the film gives us an explanation, one that raises more questions than actually answers, with a strange theory on alternate dimensions. That's very true.
That's very true.
In the film's second half, the monster action can easily divide opinion. It's common knowledge that the producer, Tomoyuki Tanaka, was aiming to push more child-friendly elements into the series as the 60s progressed, and a prime example of this is the monster talk sequence between Godzilla, Rodan, and Mothra. By no means is this a bad scene per se, but in a film that maintained a relatively serious, if sometimes light-hearted, feel in its beginning. Unfortunately, its ridiculousness, by comparison, hurts the film's standing. I love the Monster Summit.
Yeah, I within the film, I do totally agree, or like I totally understand. And I'm sure you, Chris, feel the same way. Like,
yeah,
you know, the monster talk is the monster talk. That's there now.
Yeah.
You can't get rid of it. But you know, had the film been made without it,
Chris continues, this isn't to say that all the monster action is without merit. Far from it. The sequence in which the almighty King Ghidorah utterly obliterates Tokyo is one of the standout moments of the entire Godzilla series, let alone just this film. Ghidorah's might is perhaps best illustrated in said moment, where whole skyscrapers are torn asunder and shattered in a superb special effects sequence. King Ghidorah himself has never looked better, with his 1964 incarnation being one of the most aesthetically pleasing monster designs of the series. The majority of the final monster brawl, is a joy to behold, with some iconic cinematography showcasing all four kaiju filling the frame, although Ghidorah himself easily pulls in the most attention. Beyond the monster talk silliness, one of the few complaints I have about the kaiju in this entry, and we discussed this, is Rodan's design. It isn't a terrible look for Rodan, but compared to the elegant yet intimidating design of the 1956 original, it pales in comparison. I totally agree. Have I showed you Rodan's original design?
No, actually.
I will show you.
Right, I'll have a look.
But I digress, says Chris. The film's cast is certainly memorable, with Hiroshi Koizumi returning to amiably play Professor Murai, Yosuke Natsuki as the committed detective Shindo, and Yoroki Hoshi as Naoko. The playful dialogue sequences between Shindo and Naoko, which you enjoyed very much, certainly work well in portraying their sibling relationship. Whilst our three leads play their roles with great legitimacy, it's rather a shame that the same praise cannot be afforded to our film's human antagonist, the assassin Malnus, played by Hisayi Ito. The character ultimately pales in comparison to Kenji Sahara's CD Torahata from the previous film.
Yeah, I mean, as a character, we get very little about the assassin.
Yeah.
The assassin, design-wise, design-wise, looks ridiculous. I think he's a lot of fun. But no, I totally agree. Like, there's not much to him.
There's not much to the character, Yeah, to be fair to the actor, there's not much to be played with.
Yeah, there's not much to do. But
yeah,
he looks good in sunglasses.
Well, he has to. He keeps them onto it the entire film up until he catches a fucking styrofoam boulder and
Trips.
falls down into oblivion. But, pardon my French, Chris concludes, actually. Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster is not the best film in the entire series, featuring questionable story elements, some silly monster moments, and occasionally a slow pace. But aside from these issues, this is a good entry. The film Fucking hell, excuse me. The film is engaging enough in its human drama and entertaining in its monster action, even if some elements, Rodan's new look for example, aren't perfect. As a final note, Chris states that it's interesting that Mothra's fairies willingly appear in show business this time round. You said this. You said this, Ross, that you enjoyed seeing them as like little celebrities.
Yeah, exactly.
On a variety show, and like they appear willingly. Consent goes a long way, and while on the subject of said program, I've always found it rather strange that when the fairies sing so that the two children can see Mothra, Mothra herself appears on Shindo's TV screen at home. Are we looking at stock footage the TV studio had of Mothra? Or has the audience been sucked into the fairies' trance as well?
Yeah.
Chris.
That's a great
Thank
point.
you, Chris. That was a great submission.
Thanks. Great email.
And Chris is Nuclear Warrior on Tumblr, and I will send a link over to Chrissy's blog, which you should all follow in the show notes.
Fantastic.
Thank you for that. That was a really great submission.
Yeah, great.
Ross, I'll give you the next one.
Okay, yeah, of course.
This is from Tumblr user Black Eye 15, who has submitted previously.
Okay. Thoughts on Monster Zero. So I already bought so I'll just read it from him. So I already brought up how Ghidorah, the three-headed monster, never quite clicked for me despite doing so many things I love. Even weirder is I like Monster Zero more despite it doing more things I dislike. Would be strikes against it include one less monster, Mothra, King Ghidorah falling under mind control of aliens, which starts a bad habit.
We brought that up.
Rodan being reduced to more of a sidekick rather than forming his own side before the epic team up in Ghidorah. Why did the Exilians bother to transport the Earth Kaiju? I could have given a free pass if the Exilians played up more that they were just dicking with humans. Less overall monster action, since instead of one giant battle with King Ghidorah, there's two smaller ones that are both good, of course. But outside of that, there's some monster rampaging, and the biggest final two, really, of these problems that Black Eye could have, really, you could tie out the three giant monsters and have a good alien invasion story, which is supposed to be a super big no-no with me, since the monsters could never be removed from Ghidorah. Yeah, again,
we did bring that up. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And then they here mention as well the stock footage, and this is the start of the stock footage. They continue, at least it's the best stuff from Rodan. Forgive the long post, but despite all these things I dislike, despite all the things I dislike, I like Monster Zero more, even though by all rights Three-Headed Monster is the superior film and should be more likable. No, I totally agree.
Yeah.
I really agree. Thanks, Black Eye 15. We certainly agree on some of these things, and obviously you're right in that there are some things that maybe in terms of what should technically make a Godzilla film, that things that aren't done and things that aren't. But it's always better to approach these things with a looseness. Break the rules, let it be broken. If it makes a good film out of it, then bend a few things. You can always put it back.
Thank you very much, Black Eye 15. That was of course a comment on the subject of this episode, Invasion of Astro-Monster. And our final user submission comes from one of my very best friends, Alex, who I met at G-Fest last year, and whom I miss every day.
Aww.
First off, says Alex, well done on the podcast. Seriously, it's fun to listen to. It also provides a newcomer's perspective, which is knowledgeable about the discussion of film, and willing to march off into the wild world of Japanese science fiction. Also, Steven knows his stuff because he's a huge nerd.
Also true.
I chose to take that as a compliment. Anyway, now for Monster Zero. Monster Zero is one of my favourites of the franchise. It tends to tussle with Mothra vs. Godzilla for the number 2 spot on any ranking list I might attempt. I think this film, more than most in the franchise, demonstrates how crucial human characters are.
Totally.
There are many people who love these films entirely for the fights. That's fine. That's part of the draw. But I crave a bit more from my 600th viewing. Nick Adams and Akira Takarada are brilliant together.
Yeah, they really are.
Their chemistry is so much the core of this film. I said that.
Yeah.
I also adore Akira Kubo as Tetsuo. That role is almost noteworthy just because of how far removed it is from the wheelhouse these films typically place him in.
Yeah, and that's true. We didn't talk about Tetsuo's performance as much.
Yeah. Because
more than
Akira Kubo, the actor, would usually in these kind of films play a kind of young romantic lead.
Yeah.
In a film called Gorath, he played a sort of young hotshot pilot, I believe, who was romancing Kumi Mizuno in the film. But it's very far away from the character he's playing here.
He's a lot of fun. It's great to watch him.
He's very much in Rick Moranis mode.
Yeah, it's a sort of like bumbling lovable
Well, actually,
nerd.
see what I've said that. I once put on Tumblr ages ago, not on the Kaijusaurus blog, but on my personal blog before I actually ran Kaijusaurus. Sorry, Alex, to just totally detract from
We'll
your
get
comment.
back to it.
But like all good comments, it opens itself up to further discussion. I once said that I would love to, obviously, completely hypothetically, do a remake of Little Shop of Horrors with the cast of this film.
Really? That would work. I have seen that film.
Directed by Ishiro Honda. Akira Kubo, Tetsuo, as Seymour.
Yeah.
Kumi Mizuno as Audrey. Jun Tazaki, who was Professor, as Mr. Mushnik.
Yeah.
And Akira Takarada, Fuji, as the dentist.
Sound perfect. Where does Nick Adams fit in?
Good point, yeah. He could come in and say, "Excuse me, I couldn't help but notice that strange and interesting plant. How much is it?" And of course, Audrey 2 special effects by Eiji Tsuburaya.
Oh, really? See, it all ties back together, guys. Don't worry. We're always got you. You're never gonna fall too far with us.
But I digress. So yeah,
Yes.
that's my Toho Little Shop of Horrors.
Back to the email.
Back to Alex's email. I also adore Akira Kubo as Tetsuo. That role is almost noteworthy just because of how far removed it is from the wheelhouse these films typically place him in. Yoshio Tsuchiya gets to do what he loves and creates one of the best villains, actually probably the best villain, of the franchise. Excuse me, again. The sets of Planet X are so simple but iconic.
Totally.
Same with the flying saucers. They don't do anything too out of the ordinary, although the indoor area with the trees and the gold-carrying Namikawas is actually very distinct from most alien fare of this era.
Yeah.
I agree. But what they do accomplish, they accomplish well. I also feel Ghidorah looks better here. He seems to have, at the very least, received a paint job. I didn't notice he's a bit more golden. And the puppeteers have gotten a knack of Ghidorah completely. I barely mentioned the monsters, but I think all of that is done well. I even like the new Godzilla suit, although he's probably my least favourite design introduced so far. Godzilla's dance, which we haven't
discussed.
somehow haven't fucking mentioned. Godzilla's dance on Planet X is iconic, but
It really
again,
is.
the core here is the story. The alien infiltration, the space bros in space plot, Tetsuo and his attempts to impress Fuji, and the doomed romance between Namikawa and Glenn are so rich and so prominent, it's no wonder they stand so tall in my mind. Okay, I've probably gushed enough about this film. It's amazing, and if you disagree, I will steal your kaiju and promise you a cure-all, then reveal my betrayal and display your subsequent panic through a series of news clippings before finally attacking you with your own kaiju.
That would not be nice.
It's a pretty great plan. Probably.
Probably.
Thank you, Alex.
Yeah,
Thank you,
thanks
my
a lot.
friend.
Great email. Great points.
Exactly. And before we wrap up, Godzilla's dance
Right,
on
Godzilla's
Planet
dance.
X. Because, somehow we went the entire episode without discussing
Without
this.
mentioning that.
So after Godzilla and Rodan succeed in driving King Ghidorah away from Planet X...
Yeah, no, carry on.
From Planet X in the first run, Godzilla does a little dance, which I suppose to us looks a little bit like a Highland Fling. But that's what I thought it was when I first saw it all those years
it's
ago.
a little bit like
But it's apparently it was a popular dance in Japan at the time called the Shi. And I mean, there's a publicity still of Nick Adams and Akira Takarada and Kimi Mizuno doing this with the Godzilla suit.
That's great.
Like doing the dance. I'll put it in the show notes. And there's also, for example, there's a photo of John Lennon doing it as well.
Really?
Yeah. So I think it was just a really big thing in Japan at the time. And apparently Ishiro Honda
So
did
it'd be
that.
like if in the new Godzilla film,
If he did Gangnam Style.
or if he did like the Dougie, or like Planked. Keep it running.
But apparently Ishiro Honda was not keen on this scene, but Eiji Tsuburaya wanted it in because he wanted his monsters to be more humanized and to appeal to kids more.
That makes sense.
And, it's really great because
I like it. Yeah, I think it's harmless.
It always
I
kind of
think it's
floors
nice.
first-time viewers.
Yeah, you're just like, wow, okay.
And in the dub, it's great because in the film, Godzilla does his victory dance, the Shi, and then it cuts back to the Exilian commander just saying something like, "Oh, this is a great moment. This is great." And but in the dub, cuts back to him and he just goes, "A happy moment."
A happy moment.
And on that
Always.
note, what we usually do as well is once we've heard Ross's opinion as a newcomer, I will then tell him how this film is generally perceived and see how that stacks up against his opinion.
Well, from what I've heard, I think everyone hates it. Carry on.
You can tell this is a solid fan favorite.
Yeah, totally.
We're talking probably top 5 for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Like, it's very highly regarded. To me, this is kind of the pinnacle of the 60s films. It comes right in the middle of the 60s, and it's the most symbolic of those films. It's like the ultimate 60s Godzilla film to me. It's got your aliens, it's got aliens, it's got your space babes, it's got...
I agree. This feels like the 60s.
Yeah, well, exactly.
Very, indicative of the
1960X.
1960X.
So, yeah,
great year, Steven.
You liked it, the fandom loves it, I love it. And, yeah.
There we go. Great flick. Okay, so
thank you, Nick Adams.
It's 1965. I've just been to see Invasion of the Astro-Monster. What's next? When does it come out?
Up next.
How long do I need to wait?
1966 is...
just a year.
Ebirah, Horror of the Deep.
Oh,
AKA Godzilla versus the Sea Monster.
Excellent.
AKA Godzilla, Mothra, Ebirah, Big Duel in the South Seas. And
Into it.
You might have noticed the films we've watched so far, all but one have been directed by Ishiro Honda. This next film, Ebirah Horror of the Deep, introduces Jun Fukuda, the second most prolific director of the Godzilla series. And he is very different to Ishiro Honda.
Cool.
But
looking forward to that.
I will let you discover that for yourself when we watch it. As usual, guys, thank you for listening. You can find us on Twitter, Twitter, you, Tumblr. My Twitter is at Steven Scrivello. There'll be a link. Ross's Twitter is
at Roz Menzies.
There'll also be a link. We are on Facebook, the Kaijusaurus Podcast. Give us a like, follow the page. There's updates and stuff and just general musings. Tumblr, of course, kaijusaurus.tumblr.com is where this podcast is spun off from. Soundcloud.com/Kaijusaurus is where this podcast is hosted. You can also find us on iTunes, the Kaijusaurus Podcast. Please do subscribe, give us a rating or a review if you're feeling particularly generous and you enjoy it.
And hook up with us on LinkedIn.
No.
No.
No one uses LinkedIn.
No one uses it. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't. We also don't. We don't have a LinkedIn.
If we don't...
Disclaimer, put it in the show notes. Official disclaimer, we do not have a LinkedIn.
It's going to be a hell of a lot of show notes for this episode. Yeah. So yeah, I think I've run through all the means you can contact us. If you want to get in submissions for the next film, Ebirah Horror of the Deep,
especially,
please do.
If you hated this film just here, if you really hate it, I really want to hear
If you're a real grumpy Gus who hates Invasion of Astro-Monster,
if you just hate space,
if you hate fun, and you hate Nick Adams, we want to hear from you so that we can shoot you down. No, that's a joke. If you genuinely do disagree, let us know. And, I mean, I'm not saying we'll read you out.
No, but...
oh god, this is definitely our longest yet. So yeah, and you can also reach us on Kaijusaurus@hotmail.co.uk for any submissions, thoughts you might have. Please do submit your thoughts on Ebirah Horror of the Deep in time for the next episode. I'll put a reminder on the blog. You can also submit through kaijusaurus.tumblr.com/submit. And god, that's always a mouthful, that end bit. We just run through all the social networks.
Should we just slap it off now?
Let's slap it off.
Right, okay. Cheerio, everyone. Great to speak to you.
Wait, Ross, you're not going yet. You're going back to Planet X.
Oh no! Hard luck, pal. I'm doing a thumbs down.
Hard luck, pal.
Okay. Cheerio, everyone.
Bye bye. Thank you for listening.